Hello. So this week I did Josh Connolly's Dysfunctional podcast, which is the second time I've done it. And it's kind of quickly becoming one of my favourite podcasts to take part in because we just get straight into it. Like, we're both very entrenched in the world of dysfunctional families and complex family conflict and estrangement that, we can literally just start a conversation straight away. There's no need to frame anything or to kind of introduce ourselves or give any backgrounds. We literally just get straight into discussing whatever's on our mind, whatever we're working with in the moment, or whatever issues are coming up, or just our general perceptions around the whole discourse around family estrangement globally. And there is a huge conversation happening like never before. And even before the situation with the Beckhams that happened last week, it has been happening anyway. Probably maybe the biggest contribution or contributing factor might have been Oprah Winfrey's podcast, which I thought was very good and really interesting. But Josh did share something. He said something to me about something that happened to him that's going to stay with me. And I'll just talk about it quickly. He was saying, we were talking just broadly about the idea that social influencers, people on social media, are causing estrangement. Okay, they're contributing to a rise in the numbers of people who are being estranged. Now, I think that's all very debatable. Even though polls suggest that there's higher numbers than perhaps previous studies, it's still not a definitive, because these studies are all disconnected. They're not longitudinal studies of the same demographic over a period of time. These are just disparate polls that they do give us a temperature check, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there are more people estranging now than perhaps 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It may be more indicative of the fact that people are more comfortable talking about this issue and they're hanging their hat on the topic of family estrangement. But either way, we were talking about the public discussion around how social media influencers are contributing to this phenomenon. And then Josh shared a story about he got a DM in Instagram from a lady. I don't know where she's from. She's a mother. And she said to Josh that her son, after watching his videos, decided to not speak to his mother again, to estrange from her. And Josh, naturally pushed back and just asked, are you saying that things were completely fine before he found Josh's channel and then decided to pull back? And she says, yep, there was no issues before. And I do call bullshit on that, because that just isn't how this works. Okay? And I'm not necessarily laying blame to the parents always. Okay? And I think there is an unfairness there to that. But these things don't just come out of nowhere. There's always, in most cases with my own clients, and bear in mind I work a lot with parents as well, and in some cases they will say, I think social media, or maybe not social media influencers. I've had people say, oh, they're watching this podcast and that podcast. I think it's given them ideas and made the situation worse. And I would be doing them a disservice if I just blanket agreed with them. I'll acknowledge that, yeah, people are watching podcasts and it might be influencing their language, it may be influencing their understanding of certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that equals that. And when we really get into it with the parents, they do eventually get to a place that there was issues. Okay, of course there was issues. The issues may not have been named before. Maybe things were just fine. There was a baseline. We're okay, but we're not really. But we're talking, and we're not fighting over issues. But there may have been an underlying tension. There may have been an environment where people didn't feel like comfortable sharing something. But I started to think about the mother in this scenario that messaged Josh, and I've no doubt in my mind that she's in a great deal of pain. I've no doubt that her messaging Josh was very much about that pain. But that pain may predate any issues with her son. It could be old pain from her own childhood, from whatever, maybe issues with her partner, who knows? It may not be exclusive to just this estrangement. But she never had any way of expressing that pain. She didn't know where to put it. And like, I'm of a generation where, yeah, we engage with therapy, or we try different journaling and expressive arts, creativity, somatically expressing it, yoga, movement, just talking. That these are the norm to me. Whereas it may not be the norm for this lady. She may come from a generation that we don't talk about these things. What do you mean express emotions? And a lot of people, like the tools that are available to us now, the resources, the education, they're not necessarily available to people from previous generations. Or they may not even be available to people now because they just don't feel right, or they haven't found the right way of doing it, or they're not in a place where they're ready to publicly talk about it. But this lady obviously felt strong enough that she wanted to lay it on Josh, which I do think is unfair. Okay, I do appreciate that Josh, obviously, he leans towards the perspective of the sons and daughters, but he also will admit it that he's talking about the type of parent, the extreme end of the parents who are very damaging to their sons and daughters, to the point where those sons and daughters feel like they have no choice but to pull back. Okay, but nonetheless, like this conversation, like most things, it is much more complicated. There's so many factors. I think what often is lost in it, and this is, to me, the difference between someone who creates content on estrangement and puts out posts versus what I do, which is working with it. Most of my time is spent sitting with people. And we're talking about human beings here who are very hurt, very upset. They're the product of where they were born, which they didn't choose, their parents and their parents. They're the product of so many things that are outside the awareness, but they're also the product of the lessons that they learned around accountability and avoidance. And this is the human being that's in front of me, and my job is to try and sit with these people and help them make sense of it and decide how invested they are. If it's a parent, and more often than not, they're coming to me because they want to reconcile or find some way. But that's way down the road, the reconciliation piece. A piece of work has to happen first. We need to explore, how did we really get here? Which is why I don't just pander to, social media. Another one is therapists are to blame. You see a lot of that. I'm not saying that there aren't therapists out there who don't blanket tell people to walk away. I don't know any, and I know a lot of therapists. And if anything, from what I'm seeing, therapists are more inclined to encourage reconciliation, to push people, no, you need to try, as opposed to the other end. But again, I'm talking, this is Ireland, the UK, maybe in the US, maybe it's slightly different over there, I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for other people. But it's a tough one when we constantly look outside of the family. And we see that a lot, particularly with parents as well, constantly attributing the issues to something else and not them. And that is perhaps core to the problem within the public discourse around estrangement, and how it is becoming increasingly divisive, and the inability to really look at factors within ourselves. And not everyone is comfortable doing that, because understandably we have to start feeling things that we don't want to feel. If a parent wasn't behaving great, or if they are not happy with the way they treated their kids, but they don't want to admit that because it means that they have to feel really, really bad about themselves. Now, the flip side then is that if they can work through that with someone that gets it, another human being that isn't judgmental, is not critical. And I even conscious as I say that I don't want to sound judgmental of them either, because it's not what it's about. It's never about judging anybody for me. It's just meeting this human being and what they're going through and seeing how I could help them and support them. And sometimes it's just being present and giving them that space, that level of acceptance. But not everyone is going to do that. Not everyone's willing to do that. I've had other parents come to me who, they just want it fixed. They just want whoever is estranged in the family who's not getting on, will you just talk to them, Carl, and sort it all out? And generally all roads lead back to them. And this has happened a few times, even in recent months. I'll say, look, the problems between the other people, it is linked back to you. So I'll work with you. They don't want to work. They're not ready. They're not comfortable with it. Maybe they feel they're so overwhelmed by pain, by distress. And again, that speaks to other stuff, not just a specific dynamic, which I appreciate is probably very hurtful for them, but there's other things at play. But by coming to therapy, we're helping them find a place for that pain. First, acknowledge the pain exists. meet it with a degree of compassion which everyone needs. Sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, siblings, everyone needs that. And then finding healthier ways of processing it and putting it somewhere, whether it's on paper, whether it's in art. I would argue my work, this is me putting my pain somewhere in trying to make a difference in other people's lives, put it into my book. Similar to Josh, I think Josh puts his pain into his content. He's just trying to help a cohort of people identify something which is very hard to name. And so yeah, that's kind of the point of this video. I know I'm rambling on, but just some people don't know where to put that pain. And they've never been taught. The idea of putting it somewhere is just alien to them because they were taught to just bottle it up, keep it in, but it will contaminate. For all of us, it'll contaminate unless we find a way to express it. Yeah, okay, that's all I have to say. Quick reminder, February the 8th, myself and Josh have a live discussion, Parenting Through Estrangement, which very much talks about how do we parent a child or children when we ourselves are estranged from a parent. Very real challenge for a lot of people, very difficult, because when you have kids, you are faced with your own childhood. There's your pain in front of you. And you have to manage that. You have to manage yourself. You have to be kind to yourself while also being really kind to your kids and looking after them and nurturing them. And people will struggle with that because it can be hard. Being a parent is stressful. As amazing it is, and we love our kids to bits, it's still really stressful, and the stress can be so overwhelming if it's stress from the past. If those dynamics, the parent-child dynamics, mirror stuff that happened before. So that's happening the 8th of February, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's very much an open discussion. Like, everyone's welcome. We're going to be sharing our insights and our life stories, but we want to create an open dialogue between everyone who signs up, just to let them share their experiences. What are they afraid of? What are they worried about? How are they minding themselves? Is their partner supporting them? How are they planning on approaching the conversation with their kids, if necessary, about telling them why they don't have a relationship with certain people of the family? But then also, is it possible to mitigate against estrangements going forward? And I don't believe there's a science to it, but I do think that we can work on it, constantly working on ourselves. And to me, the essence of this is all about working on ourselves. And if we can keep that up for the rest of our lives, which sounds like a long time, but not necessarily, then I would hope that has a positive imprint going forward, and the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. Just that willingness to engage and discuss and to go to difficult places, difficult conversations and difficult emotions. Hopefully that has a positive effect going forward. So I'll put a link down below. Everyone's welcome, and we'll be giving away to one person's going to win a session with me, and someone's going to win access to Josh's Inner You program, 6-week program, unlimited access. They're very helpful. No one's ever regretted doing a free consultation with me, and Josh gets people back all the time doing that course because it's really helped people. So that's it. Thank you for watching this. Feel free to share, and hope to see you all very soon.